now I think that we can begin. So I want to open with a small teaser about how far we come and to see what led to this and why is it so special to see it right now. So let's go to the, I'll choose just one of those examples. You can later on go inside every one of them and play it by yourself, of course. So the teachable machine is something that is running on my browser. That something is a classifier, an image classifier that I train right now, and it can really predict right now. So let's open, you can see here class number 1, 35 images of me, and class number 2, I'll search for something, let's just do this. Okay, and I know that this is kind of an easy task. So let's do even another one here, like the two of us. Okay, nice picture. And we'll see that the training, it can take, I think, 30 seconds. Everything here is happening while we talk. This is mind-blowing in comparison to what we used to have several years ago. And as far as we go back, it's even more impressive. So you can see right now on the right side, this is real prediction. This is a live inference of the image from the video, from my camera here. You can see that it detects class number 1. Now it's class number 3 and class number 2. Well, I hope that you are amazed as I was when I saw this. And I think that it is a good time to understand what really contributed all of that. So I'm sure that you have some thought, you have some knowledge, of course, about what led here. And I wish to start with something that I want to take you to a journey that jumps between the timeline, but also the graphical location, and to see the different contributes along the time. I hope that you'll enjoy it, and feel free again to ask me everything. If I don't notice for a message in the chat, please open the microphone and just ask everything. So I chose to go back until the old kingdom of Egypt and to talk about a magnifying glass which people found. The location is right now it's Iraq, and the assumption is that it was a magnifying glass or a burning glass or a part of a telescope. The reason that I thought that it is relevant for AI, I can give you a lot of time to wonder, but this is my own connection in my brain, so it will be kind of out. And the reason that I wanted to go back to the lens, because the main blocks that led us to reach to the knowledge that we have from the neurological side is that we were able to look on a single neuron and to examine its behavior. And in order to do that, of course, that we needed a decent microscope, a compounded microscope. And to have a compounded microscope, we needed to have some kind of magnification glass. So I think that the story that I chose to begin with is that one. And you can see that this is something archaeological that was found, but if we go back to the continue of the story of that, so in the year 424 before century, it was written that this is the first written testimonial that somebody spoke about this, and we said that The early explicit written evidence of the magnifying device is a joke in Aristophanes' The Clouds, and they literally said, Senasa wrote that it could be used to read letters no matter how small or dim. So it was written as a joke, but the intention was later on, of course, discovered and developed. So a few years later on in Iraq, the person who really got the credit for the creation of the first magnifying glass was Ibn al-Haytham, a mathematician from Iraq. And it's not that clear that he was the first one. Some people say that it's not him from Iraq, it was the Western people from England, Roger Bacon. And I think that it really doesn't matter. The point here is that it was a global effort that led to the development of the science that we have right now. It's not a single person, it's not a single religion, it's not a single country or place. So I decided to take as wide and as far as I could to compound it together. So we reached to the year 1020 and 200s, pretty much. And I think that this is a good time, because from now on, we're talking about the microscope, which was the main advantage in the field of examining small objects such as neurons or cells and similar objects. So the first one who invented the telescope, and later on who invented the compound microscope, were two guys from Holland, and their profession literally was called spectacle makers, as we call it today, the makers or the inventors. So it was nice to see that somebody named them like that. And they were the first to create the telescope and the compound microscope. And notice the year that we're talking about. It is 1595, and we'll see just from Holland, we're going to the Duchy of Florence, to Galileo Galilei, that on the same time pretty much contributed a lot to the first microscope as well. So I think that the main discovery of the microscope was of Galileo Galilei, thanks to the development of the Dutch guys from the telescope. And later on, they took the idea and really created the compound microscope. So another interesting thing actually that I want to say here, that we can see that the domains that people came from were completely different. We had a mathematician, we had a playwright that dreamed about the magnifying glass. We had a spectacle maker, and now we have an astronomer, and it just keeps getting better and better. So why are we talking about microscopes? I think that without them, we could not understand anything that we see today. I mean, we needed to have some option to visualize those tiny objects and to understand what's happening there. So I'll pause for a moment from the lenses side, and I'll just say I want to go to a different domain that kept on developing and evolving, which is the actual math that we know today. So from the math point of view, from France, and just FYI, my mom is from France, so I wanted to find a guy or a girl that really can represent my mom's country as well. So Jean Lerond, the name is not easy for me, but
it's the Lambert. The name is the Lambert. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least from what I know, you know.
Thanks. So he was a mathematician, and he created the first, he invented and proposed the first convolution integral that we know until today. We actually use the same techniques even today. So if you want to go and if you want to deeper in that side, and let's just talk for a moment about what is that a linear convolution. And we can see that when we have two different objects and we want to measure, for example, the intersection between them, the, the rate that it keeps on accumulating and connect and changing together, this is actually the output of the function that we have of the convolutional function. And we can see that right now, that while we keep on making a progress on the time axis, and the area, the intersected area is the same, so the function is static and keeps on giving us the same value, which is 1 in that case. And from now on, the intersected area is decreasing, and it keeps on, it's just getting lower and lower until we reach 0. So this is a good moment actually to just explain the abstract of that of the convolutional purpose. And the way that I like to think about it is that we have several inputs and that we want to measure the combination of them and to give a real metric to this combination. And this gives us a different angle to calculate this combination, which apparently very useful in the image processing field and also in the text, in the time series data, and we'll see it later on. But this, I think, was nice to see that the beginning was, the math is not something new. The math that we use and know today, it's not new. So let's go back to the continuous of the microscope axis, and we see that along the way, the roadmap led to Germany, that Matthias Schleiden and Theodor Schwann, a botanist and zoologist, they proposed something that is still used until today, and this makes sense for everyone today, but back then it was very hard to improve. They proposed something that called the unified cell theory, and they said that all living things are composed of one or more cells. The cell is a basic unit of life, and new cells arise from existing cells. So you can see on the bottom here the drawings that they did, and there are heaps of more drawings, and it's very nice and interesting to see that. And again, this was possible. This was possible thanks to the microscopes that the other guys developed. So this is why I think that the lens and the development of the magnifying lens is a big building block in the path. Of course, this is just one of the paths that I chose to show here. Okay, we're going to Italy. On the year 1855 in Italy, Bartolomeo Panizza, that was an atomist, he discovered the first map that really served us, keeps on serving us about the visual connection, the visual cortex that we have in our brain. And he traced, as I bolded here, he traced the visual projection from the optical nerve to the cerebellum structure, establishing the posterior cortex as the central for the vision. And what we see on the left side in the picture, on the upper side, this is the eyes. The perspective here is from the top of the head. If someone is looking from above us to the brain, and we see just a slice of that. So the upper side is the eyes, and the bottom side is the primary visual cortex, which he discovered. And you can see those connections, the traces of the nerves in red, that this is what he found. He found the road, actually. And from this day on, we still based on that. When we talk about the connection of the visual cortex that we have, the connection of the visual neurons in our brain. So the year is 1855, and we came from Italy. Okay, the next place is to start and understanding how we can really investigate the behavior of the nerves. Back then, we didn't have lots of techniques, and the first one really offered a unique technique, and was named, the technique was named on his name, of course. Was Golgi, Camillo Golgi from Italy, a biologist, and he invented something that he called the black reactions. Today we call it the Golgi's method, and he was able to give a color to different areas of the nerve. And what you can see on the left upper side is a drawing that he did, Golgi himself, when he looked on a specific place in our brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is, just FYI, the hippocampus is an area which is responsible for, mostly known for helping us in the memory and to possess the knowledge that we have. So it's like a database, you can call it if you want, maybe. But this is the purpose, the main purpose of the hippocampus as we know today. And many years later, we can see here on the left bottom side a picture of the hippocampus with a digital picture that somebody did. And you can see that each line here, each point here, it's a neuron. It's a neuron with an axon and a synapse, and we'll understand a bit more about those later on. But this is something that, thanks to his method, he was able to see those very tiny details. Together with him, some other researchers also contributed to this effort, and Franz Niesel, a psychiatrist from Germany, he used a different technique using crystal violet, and the technique called later on the Niesel staining method. The technique was able to differ between the nucleus of the nerve and the rest of the nerve. And you can see here that on the left bottom picture, we have the Niesel bodies, which are in the surrounding area of the nerve. We have the nucleus here, and we have the nucleolus inside. This area, the nucleus, and some people, some of it is in the nucleolus as well. It's what this is what's possessing our DNA. So this is a huge advantage in the field back then. And you can see here the actual size of those objects, okay? And you can imagine how difficult it is to make a research on something that we can barely see with our bare eyes. Okay, so together with him, we had Golgi, we had Niesel, and last but not least, another one who contributed in that angle was Santiago Ramon y Cajal from Spain, a neuroscientist back then it wasn't very accepted and common to call someone a neuroscientist, but I think that from the work that he did, the name just stick with him. And he used and contributed to Niesel and Golgi and used their techniques and kept on evolving that and created something that's called the neuron doctrine. And this is interesting to see that also in those series, pretty much the name neuron was coined. Back then it was only a nerve. But pretty much from those days that they did the work and that you see right now, they coined the name neuron. And you can see on the left side drawings that they did. You can see the neurons, you can see the axons, and you can see the synapses, everything wired together. And the main point of the neuron doctrine was that Kajal told everyone that the nerve system consists of numerous nerve units, which are anatomically and genetically independent. This is something that I think supposed to be a bit familiar to you from what we saw a bit earlier. Do you have any ideas to what it can connect, that kind of proposal that it gave? I'll give you just a moment to wonder here, and I'll see if anyone has any question in the chat. Peter, feel free to help me with the chat.
Yeah, I am following it.
So do you have any idea to whom can it connect, and to what kind of research can it connect? Okay. So my point here was that after he proposed something that we can see as very trivial if we look on the history. He actually said that the proposal of the cell theory that Matthias Schleiden gave, it's also applied to the neurons, which actually makes sense, but eventually this is something that wasn't known and acceptable back then. Okay, so the year was 1830, if I'm not mistaken, and many years later, Heinrich William Gottfried von Waldeyer Hertz, I managed to say the whole name, from Germany, an anatomist. He also he contributed a lot to the work, and I think that he also helped the other researchers to achieve where they come. And eventually it was a mutual research, and this is why I think that it's worth mentioning him. He's known for consolidating neuron theory, and I think that this is a good time to understand what is the neuron that they found. So as you can see here on the image, we tend to talk about different parts of the neuron, which is the cell, the nucleus itself, the cell body, the axon, which is just the pipe that you see here, okay? This is the axon, and the dendrites that you see here. And between between an axon and a dendrite, like you can see here, and what we have, where we have the white bounding box here, we have the synapse gap. Actually, this is a synapse gap, but this is a synapse between them two. So let's just understand what's the role of each one of them. So the dendrites is actually what we can call as the input pipe, the input legs, the input biological objects of the neuron. And it's responsible to grasp the data and the chemical information and the actual chemicals that are transferred from a different neuron. Once the dendrite is processing, is grasping the chemical information, is transferring it to the cell, the nucleus in the cell body. And the nucleus it has different parts in it. And the purpose of the role of the nucleus is to be the processing unit of the chemicals that from the input, and to decide whatever we want, whatever it wants to transfer to the axon, and to transfer actually to the next neurons, to the following neurons after it. And it houses the genetic material of our body, which is the DNA. And the axon itself, it's actually an output pipe. And you can see here on the nice drawing on the upper left side, we have the synapse, which is the surrounding of the cell body here. We have the orange circle, which is the nucleus, and we have the axon, which is responsible to transfer the data and to transfer the chemicals to the outputs of the neuron, and to transfer it to the next neurons actually. And this is what starts to be interesting, because the way that it transfers information, chemicals, data between one neuron to another is using those synapses. And those synapses is something that is a dynamic connection between different neurons. It can be changed purposely or unpurposely. It can be strengthened, or it can be weakened. I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, but I'm assuming you understood me. And the way that it connects is that we have a threshold, some kind of a threshold of an output of an axon that decides if a neuron will transfer the data from him to the next one. And we have a threshold also, which are the minimum chemicals that are needed to be in this synapse, in the synapse gap, that will be sufficient enough to be accepted to the next neuron in line. It means that, and the way that it can be strengthened is, for example, if I want to memorize a phone number, I can say it again and again and again and again until I'll be able to just have the whole serial of the number in my mind. And what actually happens in the specific area of the brain that is responsible for this kind of activity is just that there are more synapses that can talk with each other and communicate with each other, and it's like the chicken and the egg in the way that it increases the potential of chemicals to be transferred from one neuron to another, and if it goes well, so there are more connections. So this is something that I think that this is a good moment to pause and not to keep on digging on the neurological side, and to understand that this is exactly what we have in the neural networks that we know today. We have a connection between nodes, and we have an activity function that we decide we decide what it will be. And together with that, when we have an overfit, when we are addicted to a coffee, it means that this path is totally burned off. And we want to contribute using the different paths, and to just strengthen also different paths and make a better balance between them. So I'd like you to think about the analogies that we can see from this moment to the next technical building blocks that we are about to see. And just something for you to wonder. Eventually, we are all part of nature, and this is a picture of the brain and a picture of the universe in a different scale. And I believe that it's not a coincidence that it looks similar. And this is just a teaser outside of the lecture. So, any idea who led us until now? Which country contributed the most? Where the most people came from? I'll give you 10 seconds to wonder and to try and give the right answer. All right, so until now, Germany led the journey. It's nice to see. I decided that it will be very nice to present it on a geographical map as well to see the different angles. And unfortunately, I think that the internet doesn't present the areas of the researchers that from different other areas that I'm sure that contributed a lot as well. But this is what Google helped me to find. So we reached to the first time, the first place that actually computers, some logician and neuroscientists, they decided to work together and to create the first inspired neuron in an actual machine. The meaning of that is not that the meaning of that is that they understood the work that people did on the neurological brain. They understood some of the behaviors of the neurons that we have in our brain, and they decided to take a simplified version of that and to mimic that in just a mathematical function, and to take a machine that will just execute this mathematical function. So the first actual place was in America. Warren, McCullough, and Walter Pitts. They created something that later on was called the MCP neuron, and this is actually taking several inputs, give them the weights of 1 or 0 if they are relevant or not, some aggregate them together, send them to an activation function, a threshold function that we have here, and to calculate the output. The interesting thing here was that, first of all, it's inspired from the biological brain, so it's cool. It's just a cool fact. But beside of that, it was able to calculate, to solve complex problems without the need to write literally the whole code in that. So something that was missing here, the main two things that were missing here is, first of all, it wasn't able to learn. The second one was that it wasn't able to handle nonlinear problems. And nonlinear problems are a big field in the domain of the type of problem that we have. And later on, we see why it was such a main issue, those two facts. So the year was 1943. And I just want to give something that is not, to give another note that is not written here. A lot of this development, a lot of this progress was thanks to a less happy time that we had in the past, with the World War I and the World War II, the fights between different countries. Each country wanted to be the first one to rule this field, and they believed that it will solve whatever they need to, that this will be a powerful tool to overcome and win the opponent. But we look on the bright side here, that a very well-known person in the field was Alan Turing. He was from the UK, and later on, the reason that I gave this entry is that lots of his work was during the wartime, and he contributed a lot to the AI field. And I think that from this day on, he gave hope to people and to countries and to lots of institutions to believe that there is a potential AI solution. And he created something, a definition that is still escorting us until today, which is whether a machine can, to decide on a way, a mathematical way, a scientific way, that we can say that we can decide whether a machine can think. This is later on was called the Turing test. Back then it was called the imitation games. The meaning of that is, as we can see today in the, let's take an example of the deep fake that we have today. The definition of the Turing test is, for example, if we watch a video and we are, if you're watching a video, a fake video, and we're watching a real video, and we are not sure which is the fake one and which is the real one, it means that the machine passed the Turing test. Well, I'm not sure if it's aligned with the definition of thinking. It just means that maybe it's good enough for the human needs. But back then it was very powerful to understand that we have finally a scientific way to measure that. And he was an icon. He really, it was a beginning of an era of explosion in the AI field. Lots of countries, lots of institutions used their funds and try to make a huge progress. And everyone thought that it is just very, very close to have an AI machine that can really do magics, as we keep imagining until today. Another important figure in this field was Frank Rosenblatt, which took the work that McCullen and Pitts did and keep on progress, we keep on evolving that. He literally what he changed is that he said that the input of the neurons has some kind of a processing unit, something that we can say, we can use it today. And he said that besides of just giving weights of 1 and 0, we'll give a different weight to each one of them. And you can see from his book, back on the back left side here, some image that he presents everything. And I think that it's interesting to see that that video was taken in the 1960s back then, and to see that, okay, let's just watch it for a moment, and I want you to just focus on the task that he's doing, focus on the facilities that he needs, literally the hardware that he needs to be able to execute this task, and just enjoy.
1950s and 60s, scientists built a few working perceptrons, as these artificial brains were called.
He's using it to explore the mysterious problem of how the brain learns.
This perceptron is being trained to recognize the difference between males and females. It is something that all of us can do easily, but few of us can explain how. To get a computer to do this would involve working out many complex rules about faces and writing a computer program. But this perceptron was simply given lots and lots of examples, including some with unusual hairstyles.
But when it comes to a people, the computer looks at facial features and hair outline and takes longer to learn what it's told by Dr. Taylor. Andrew Cruikshank's wig also causes a little heart-searching.
After training on lots of examples, it's given new faces it has never seen and is able to successfully distinguish male from female. It has learned. While promising, this approach to machine intelligence virtually died out.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. And I want just to wonder a bit about how incredible this advantage was back then. It was literally, it was mind-blowing, and you can imagine how people reacted to the first time that they saw a machine that can solve a problem without the need to really define it. And I think that it's kind of a magic, especially back then. So the different limitations, it was able to learn better right now. It's not the whole story, of course, here, just some points along the way, but it was, the main issue here was that it was still not able to solve non-linear problems. And I hold for a moment the path of the evolving of computer science and the technical neural networks that we know today. And I think that it's nice to see that the main advantages of the interpretation of the visual cortex as we know it today was in those years between the 1959 until the 1998 from Hubble and Twizzle, neurophysiologists, sorry, that they did lots of experiments to understand how the visual cortex is built and how is it behaves. And you can see from the drawings that we have here that we're talking about the visual cortex in that manner, V1 area, the same area that we mentioned a few minutes ago. And we see that it is built from different models, and the beginning of the models is responsible to identify very simple patterns that we can see, some lines with specific directions that we have. And this is something that, of course, now for it's a common knowledge for the people in the field, but back then it was a huge discovery. And it's interesting also to see that this is a kind of behavior that we see when we try to interpret and to reverse engineering the neural networks that we know.
Well, we have a couple of comments from Ina.
Yeah, wait a lot. Yeah. How I like this old British accent, okay. The main issue was theoretical proof that perceptron can't calculate or propose. I think they got Nobel Prize, but pure cats.
So I think regarding the first comment, this is XOR, about the operator XOR that the perceptron can calculate, but
this is, we'll see it in a couple of slides, and it will deep dive there to understand the kind of issues that it presents. Okay. Ina, if I won't answer your question in a few slides, just ask again, and we can stay after the talk as well to discuss it. So I think that it is a good time to talk about the visual cortex for a moment and to understand how does it behaves. So the visual cortex that we know today is built from different areas. It's usually known for 5 different areas, 5 V's. And the same area that we spoke of it a few minutes ago, which is the V1, the primary visual cortex, it's here in the back of our head. And this area is responsible for the beginning of the processing of the visual information that we have. It is built from 6 different layers. Each layer has different responsibility and different connections as well. And the all 6 layers are built from different models that are vertically divided from each other. And each model can have a different responsibility. For example, to be responsible to identify a specific line in a specific direction. And this area of the brain, you can see in different animals. Where is it located? Usually it's in a place that is very safe evolutionally. And we can say that the back of our head is safer than the front or the sides. If we fall, we usually fall to the front. And the different area that I want to just point and to explain a bit is the 2 paths that we have for the progressing of the visual information that we have from the V1 area to different parts of the visual cortex. So the way that data is transferred is from the eyes, using the paths that we saw earlier and the nerves that we saw earlier, which are colored here in blue. They reach to the V1 area, and then it started to make the progress. It starts to make the progress to different area, from the dorsal stream and the ventral stream. So let's understand what those 2 streams are doing. And it is commonly to differ between the 2 of them, and to say that the dorsal stream is the where pathway and the ventral stream is the what pathway. As far as we go in the what, we can see that the pattern of the visual pattern is becoming more abstract and more complicated. And until we reach to the FFA area, which is responsible to identify, for example, faces. And this is something that we can say that as far as we go, as far as the data is transferred and keep progress, the more abstract the processing is. And this is very nice to see that we share the same concept both in the interpretation of the neural networks that we code and also the behavior of the visual cortex that we have here. So I think that another nice mention here is from Henry Kelly, which was an aerospace and ocean engineer who created the basics, who proposed the basics of backpropagation technique. A backpropagation technique is a mathematical solution that enabled us to correct our model and to propagate error that we have from the model in order to change the weight of the networks that we have. We'll see it in a couple of slides in the combined solution that we have today. So in 1962, Marvin Minsky, which was a mathematician, he literally attacked in a book the work that Frank Rosenblatt did, and said that it's all nice, but it's not able to solve the XOR problem. The XOR problem is, as you can see it on the upper left side here, is once we have the use case of this use case, which has 2 different groups, the green and the reds, and the distribution as you can see here. And it means that a linear line is not able to distinguish between those 2 classes. It is not possible just to draw a line here and to differ between the two points, the 2 groups. And on this period, I think that he contributed a lot, this issue, not Minsky, this issue contributed a lot to something that until now called the winter of AI. Back then it was the first winter of AI. Just few words about the winter of AI. It means that if we talk about the enthusiasm and the huge hope and the big funds that people invested in the field of developing and researching in AI in universities, armies, in the companies and countries. So it means that the hope was a bit, the hope was not as it used to be, and lots of people thought that it's the end of the era of AI and decided to stop investing in the field. Of course, that lots of people kept on making a progress, but it wasn't as it used to be until then. A few years later, Alexei Ivanko from Ukraine, a mathematician, he proposed something that we treat it today as the deep neural network. Back then, he called it the group method of data handling with 8 layers. And this was a huge advantage in the field, and it contributed a lot regarding the type of problems that it can really solve. A huge a huge advance that we had back then was thanks to those 3 guys as well, that they created a solution of, they were able to combine the backpropagation problem, the backpropagation solution with the neural network techniques. And it means that it was actually was able to learn thanks to the feedback that it got from the prediction and the error and that the model gave. So let's just pause for a moment for those 2 last breakthroughs actually that we had. So the solution that Alexei proposed, it actually, this is what contributed a lot in the way that it was able to solve the XOR problem, if I'm not mistaken. And this fact was able to solve more complicated problem as well, because it was able to train much better. It was able to improve much better. The technique of backpropagation means that if we look on an input of a net, or the initialized state of a network with certain weights, the weights need to be changed along the training time according to the inputs and the input of the data and the labels that they have, and to correct themselves according to the prediction that we have. So this backpropagation technique was very powerful. Was very powerful back then. To combine it with this type of architecture, and you can see that I see that Ina shared. Thank you, Ina. We can go back after the end of the talk and to open that together for those who want.
Yeah, actually, after Ron finishes, if you could describe to us what's written, and I'm reading it briefly, this link. If you could describe what's written there, it'd be interesting. We're going to finish in about 20 minutes, Ron, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we reached to the year 1986, and we see that we're almost there, but the main huge breakthrough that I think was the last one worth mentioning in that specific path was the one of Jan LeCun, when he combined the backpropagation and the convolutional functions and created a solution to do handwritten, digits classification of handwritten digits. This was actually a task that he trained for several days, and it was mind-blowing to see all of those different ideas really combined together, the backpropagation, the convolutional, the deep neural networks, and of course, it was just the beginning. So I think that it is common to say that the 1990s is the end of the second AI winter. Again, those names are pretty flexible and not very clear. But the point here is that I think it was the main late advantage that we had. And you can see a video from, at least it states that it's from 1993, of the young Yann LeCun and the job that he's doing. The discovery was a bit before the video, at least from what we can understand here. And it's quite amazing, but still it wasn't ready yet. And of course, the next few stuff is, I guess that you already know the answer for that, but the next few stuff are from different angles that we didn't see until now. The two main advantages that were still missing is that the hardware, the cost of the hardware, and the training time of everything, and the knowledge that was very kept between the researchers. So if you want to go deep about, to understand a bit deeper about the convolutional behavior, I just want to open that link so you can understand how interesting it is. We're not going to read all of that to play with all of that together. But this is a very powerful tool that people published. I met it a few weeks ago, and it shows you the behavior of an RGB input image from the left side with the relevant class labels from the right side, and what each neuron supposed to see, and the behavior of the specific connections between each one of them, the activations, and the real value for each one of them. So this is a very nice tool. I'm sure that if it can be very nice for everyone to just play with it and understand a bit more about what actually happens in the networks that we train. And the next, I think, huge breakthrough was just the two common things that we already know: the explosion of the internet in 1990 and the advantage of the hardware that we saw and know until now. And the beginning of it is important to me to just state that I think that the main advantage was pretty much reached in the work that Yann LeCun published and proposed back then, because those architectures are the same solution that we use until now. It might be different from the state-of-the-art solutions that we have, but they are still the same concepts and creates amazing results. And the next advantages are the present, not the history. So I think that this was the journey that I wanted to take you, and I hope that you enjoyed it. A few different things that I just want to point out before we wrap here is that I want to go to some nice inspirational video that I like. If you want, let's just choose one of those young guys here, young fellas here, and just watch them. If someone wants to choose what you want to see. So we have Jack, we have Adib, and we have Sumesh. Would you like to choose one of them to see their inspirational video? Okay, let's just watch Jack. That Sumesh. Victor says Sumesh. Okay, Sumesh it is. Thanks. So, sorry for that. Let's just reach to Sumesh. I'm not sure if I'm saying the name correctly, but the amazing story of Sarag Sumesh was that I believe that this is the power of the internet that we have now, the power of researchers and curious people that just can create everything so easily. Not easily, but everything is much more approachable. And this child, he was 5 years old when he created robotic vacuum cleaner to clean his house. And later on, he invented some other things as well that are like a robotic hand and some amazing, like smart seatbelt. And I think that it's amazing to see. Just watch.
Hi, my name is Simon. I'm 10 years old and I'm from Kochi, a southern city in India. And this is my invention. It is a smart seatbelt. In a normal seatbelt, a child or an aged person will be panic after an accident, so they cannot detach the seatbelt on time. And this was preventing my school from installing the normal seatbelt in the school bus. And my solution is a smart seatbelt. The smart seatbelt has a vibration sensor which we can attach to the vehicle
So yeah. So the point here was just to give you a.
But what's the continuation? How does it show how it works?
Yeah. It just it was cut out in the middle. Sorry.
Keep.
The accident. A solenoid to lock and unlock the seatbelt, a motor to control the seatbelt, and a microcontroller to control all other operations. When the accident happens, the motor pulls the person back so that the person will be safe, and when the accident safely overs, the seatbelt detaches by itself so that the person can get out of the vehicle easily. It can also sense if the vehicle is on fire or if the vehicle falls down to a river, and sense how many people were sitting in the vehicle and send the information to the police and the paramedics so they can come with enough equipment to save the people. And this is the prototype of my smart seatbelt.
Yeah, thanks for asking to finish that. I chose to present this kind of ideas because, and this kind of amazing child and the work that they did, because I think that it is important for us to understand that everything is approachable today. The data is approachable, and eventually those huge discoveries that we saw along the journey is from different domains, from different countries, different religions. It doesn't really matter. And those young childs are the perfect example to say that if you want something, you can get it, you can do the research and learn everything today by yourself if you're willing to work hard enough. And this is just some of my tips if you want to keep on evolving and to keep on learning here. I just want to finish with a few stuff that you'll know that it's existing here in the presentation. As we said in the beginning, that you have the link. You can see everything that we saw right now. if you want to contact me, you have my email here, you have my LinkedIn here. There is a nice video from the nice talk to see from the 1950s and 1960s that they wonder about the future of AI. So it's very interesting to watch it and to see that this is the same conversation that we have right now. And just last but not least, if you want to dive a bit inside, I noted here some of the links, not all of them, but some of the links that I used, and there are many more. And if you want to propose something that will maybe just I'll insert it to the next lecture, you can just enter the link here and just say the fact that you want to be added, the year of the person, to add a link to understand it, so I'll be able to read it as well. And just maybe it will be included in the next time that we'll present this kind of historical and scientific journey that led us. And I think that this is it, Peter. I hope that everyone enjoyed it. And Ina, I think that this is a good time to open the talk that you asked before, or that you noted before.
So I didn't ask question. I just wanted to add some information. For me, it's like I have never thought about it. So I got a GPU as something granted, but I don't think that the GPU was invented for deep learning. I think it was probably for gaming. It's interesting to check this. I actually don't know. I wasn't so interested in it.
I agree.
Yes, regarding to so I am in the area of, let's say, neural networks from 93, I think. And so what you call wind, so I just, I know it exactly because we didn't have possibility to publish papers. It was very difficult and we had a lot of competition with statisticians. So it was, so there was a lot of stories. But actually, so from historical point of view, it's really interesting just to understand what led to except of like fathers of deep learning like Hinton and Jan LeCun and many others, and the academy over time when people just were working on academic problems. So it is really interesting to see what is the reason that like everything started suddenly. I think after AlexNet, the area started like to be once again raising.
Yeah.
And so I haven't. So I expected from this lecture something different, like connection between some research in neuroscientists and in deep learning. Because Hinton is from the family of a very well-known neuroscientist, and he has a lot of other models, and he attacks all this modern approach and speaks about capsule theory. So I think this is what I expected from this lecture, and more information on the recent like development in the neuroscience. But so you compose your lecture differently, but anyway, thank you very much. But for me, there is a lot of things that are missing if you want really to address the problem. And also what is interesting to me, I also have never thought about it. So it's we didn't have GPUs. But all these convolution operators can be done in optics because it's convolutions. And I also don't know if people tried just to compose some device where you have like lenses, and then you have actually something like deep network. I don't know, so it's possible.
How can you do it with lenses if the combination of the different areas of the images is not like a summation, for example, it's something else? How can you do this with optics? It's interesting.
It's convolution. If this convolutional network, and you can have lens that exactly does this exactly. So you can just make a lens that makes a specific type of convolution. It's better to speak with physics. I just know that it is possible.
Yeah, it actually sounds very interesting, and I assume that the backpropagation process will be physically a bit harder, but completely possible.
I don't speak about backpropagation. I speak about learning something, even in software, and maybe it takes a lot of time, but let's in real time you can really build optical device that makes exactly these convolutions. I'm not sure that you can backpropagate in optics. It's more difficult, but just inference you can actually do in in optics.
Actually, yeah, I think I want to just address to some of the topics that you said here, because I think it's interesting. And first of all, regarding the GPU, I'll start with the easiest one. Regarding the GPU, yes, it wasn't invented for the research of the AI. Completely not. It was invented for gamers. And later on, people understood that it's very, very useful for this kind of functions that we need to do in the matrix calculation that we do in deep learning. And today we have ad hoc hardware for that, such as TPU and lots of other names, but it was a big breakthrough, because if we look on the example of Jan LeCun in the 90s, in the beginning of the 90s, the task that he did took several days with a hardware that was barely accessible to anyone besides universities and places like that. And today, at the beginning of the lecture, we saw an example of training a much more complicated image classifier in no time on my browser. Okay, so this is, it contributed. It wasn't the purpose, but it contributed a lot. Also, the microscope and the magnification glass, it wasn't the purpose, but it contributed. And regarding the current state of neuroscience and AI, I think that this is something that I personally have lots of passion in it for it, and try to research on it as well. And I think that today lots of people have ego, and they differ between those two domains. And there are some concepts, as you said, as the capsule that proposed a few years ago that might be very powerful, and I believe that there is a big room for good collaboration, but maybe we'll just do another lecture for that. Peter, sign me up.
Ron, do you have any references for this, or like if somebody's interested, where she should start reading, or like specific good articles?
Not something we can find some. We can do a research and share it together. But today we have Google Scholar. It's enough that you just type the words neuroscience and deep learning or AI and search for late publications.
If you will find like a post on even Medium post, something like, a simple way to get into it in the beginning, not a scholarly article, let me know and I'll share it in the group so people can look at it.
So I think it's very easy to find papers on capsule networks, as well as probably you can find already some lectures on capsule networks, because the papers, it's a bit difficult to read, but it's not very difficult papers, let's say. But I think that probably there is update because from this year, so it's worth looking at this, as well as we have a lot of applications already in many areas, including segmentation and including tracking, and at least from the previous year. So it's just search internet. There is a lot of work that was done. But I know that there is a research in neuroscience that they try to somehow to combine with deep learning and having new models. So it's a really interesting topic. But and this is what I expected from this lecture, actually. But okay, but.
I'm sorry, but
okay.
We hope that we'll create another lecture as
So
that. It's much more complicated today, because back then it was really inspired and with simple stuff, and today we barely understand the code that we're doing in deep learning. But I will make a research, and Peter will share it with the community as well. Nice leads. And Dina, of course, you are more than welcome to contribute and to share everything. We'd be happy
for sure.
for any contribution.
Yeah, for sure. Really feel free if you think there's specific papers or specific posts that are very high-end and relevant. Post it in the Reddit group. I would like to see it. Others would also like to see it. So, yeah, thank you everyone for mentioning it. Anybody else? Somebody send something. I don't think this link is working for me.
Varam said that that there is a good book about photonics and machine learning, which is called Neuromorphic Photonics. Interesting.
I can tell you something about the convolutions. It works it's used not only in the 2D aspect. My lecture that I had is for 3D convolutions. So if you have a scanning point cloud of an environment, also using there the mathematical convolutional way, it's a very efficient way to parse the 3D model or 3D scene. And it can be used also in more dimensions than that when we want to parse even more complex types of signals. Or on the one dimension, it's sometimes used to parse audio signals or any type of signal, actually, which is, again, one-dimensional. Anybody else? I'm trying to press the links you sent, but they are not loading for me for some reason. I don't know why.
I can enter that. It's working for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Toward an integration of deep learning and neuroscience. Yeah.
But also, I remember the first time, all this work on learning with neurons activity. So they put cats in a kind of in basket, and they closed it. So the cats couldn't really see the natural world. And so when they also opened it, so they couldn't orient it between vertical and horizontal edges. And they were blind, and there is some principle of plasticity, so I don't exactly remember the word. And so they couldn't then really see properly. So it depends on which age you start to look at the real data. So it's, and there was a lot of research in neuroscience that if you think about it from human point of view, and if you like animals, it's a disaster, because it's really pure animals, let's say. And there was a lot of contradiction in community for doing experiments like this one. So it's like something different, just adding a bit of information, a little bit more. Okay, thank you very much anyway.
Thank you. Anybody else? Because otherwise we're gonna wrap up. Yeah, no, maybe. Okay, so I'll finish, okay? Yeah. So really, thank you, Ron, for joining and giving us this talk, the historical overview of how machine learning evolved. Thanks again. I want to say to everybody here again, this community is growing fast, and it's a new thing, and it's all, you know, like in experimenting stages. So, and it's amazing to seeing the participation of people and people sharing ideas and posts and you know, engaging and showing us their interest. It's kind of awesome, really. Like it makes us want to work more and do more, even though we don't get paid for it, just because it's reaching out to so many people who have the same interest as us is fun. Again, there will be more lectures. I will be probably by the end of this weekend, I will post at least one more lecture. I actually today got notified that we have a researcher from Seattle University who runs an AI lab for semantic understanding of text and NLP type of NLP processing. So she will be doing a lecture, and AI was still in this call, I feel, or maybe he left already. It will also be doing a lecture, a hands-on lecture for deepfake generation in Zoom. So if you're not on the newsletter, feel free to register. I actually didn't send the link to the newsletter, which I will do now. And also, again, you can find us on Discord and Reddit. On Discord, it's just live chat. We're always there, you know, everybody's talking with everybody. So really just feel free to join. I'm gonna also send the link to this right now. Yeah. So this is the links to everything where you can find us. Every time I need to paste it, it's the formatting is bad. There we go. And to the newsletter. Where is it? Here's the newsletter. And this is it. I think, yeah. Feel free to really post, say, share ideas, share thoughts. This community is for everybody. And thank you for joining in today.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. I will leave this again for a minute because many times people sometimes.
Victor, I'm just seeing right now that you said Germany. You are totally right.
Yeah. He sent it a second before you said it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I'm gonna turn this off, everybody. Have a great day, evening, morning. Bye-bye.